भारत कीर्ति सीरीज।
Namaste. It is my pleasure to welcome you back to Moralok for the penultimate episode on the Janpad, that ang of the Saptang state that we have been discussing all these weeks. We are going to discuss today temples and festivals. We've just stepped out of the festive season, not a very festive one, unfortunately, this year. But we know very well the value, the joy, the meaning that festivals and temples bring into our lives. So what was it like for the Mauryans? Now for the Mauryans, life depended on the Vedic Trayi, the three Vedas, the way of life prescribed or set down in the three Vedas, the Vedic sanskars, the solar sanskars from birth to death. These were the smart karmas. There was yet another way of communicating with the divine, which was through pujan, through deities in temples. This pujan has been mentioned by Panini in his Ashtadhyayi, and remember he wrote at the same time, around the same time as the Mauryan Empire. Kautilya also mentions this in his Arthashastra, and he says that deities are to be worshipped through pranipat, that is obeisance, upahar, and upahar of pushp and flowers and beautiful perfumes and incense. Now, which deities and which divinities were these? The Arthashastra itself, in its plan of the city, mentions that right in the center there should be a temple of the goddess Aparajita, one of the roops of goddess Durga, and there should be a temple of Uma and Maheshwar. A number of other gods and goddesses are mentioned in the Arthashastra, and we also find some very few remains of the Mauryan Sunga period from which we can understand who these deities were, what their murtis were like, and how they were worshipped. I will explain this to you, this introduction of the deities and the devs, devtas who were worshipped, in terms of things that we understand. So we will start with those deities we are very familiar with. So let us start with, say, Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu is mentioned in the Vedas, but the form in which he was worshipped during this period was the five Vrishni Veers. This is the family of Krishna Vasudeva. So Krishna, Balram, also known as Sankarshan, as well as Sambh, Anirudh and Pradyumna. Certain other forms, as in the Narsimha form and the Varaha form, were also incipiently worshipped in some of the murtis which have been found close to the Mauryan period. There are examples from Bhit, Mathura, Ghosundi, some inscriptions, some remains of pillars and temples from which we know all this. Lord Shiv, his worship is Shashwat in this subcontinent. Shivlings have been found dating back to the Harappan period, and such was the case also during the Mauryan period. And both Lord Vishnu and Lord Shiv in different forms have been mentioned by the Greek visitor Megasthenes, and Sankarshan or Balram has had a special mention in Megasthenes' account of the deities worshipped. Then there was Devi, the different manifestations of Devi, Shri, Lakshmi, Durga, Mahishasur, Mardini. So we find certain textual references such as the Shri Sukt or in the Taittiriya Upanishad, and we also in this case have found images of Shri with lotus and elephants. We have found images of Durga seated on a lion. So you can see that these images that we worship today, the murtis that we worship today, have a very, very long provenance, and their roots lie in the Vedic literature, because the way they have been described there, the murtis that we find, there is a kind of path that we can trace back. This is a complex subject, a very complex subject, and this is not an episode where we are focusing on this. But there is a certain parallel, there is a root in the Vedas of the way this pujan and this archana was done of the deities and the temples. Now for the temples themselves, we have found terracotta figurines of small votive temples so that we know what they were like. There was a temple building, there was a tank, there would be certain pillars, and there would be a lot of nature. So temples were situated in nature. Here you can see an illustration of the only temple closely associated with Bindusar, the son of Chandragupta Maurya. This was built in the 3rd century before the Common Era. It burnt down. It was rebuilt in the 2nd century before the Common Era. And you can see that it is a raised apsidal temple. And here are a few other examples of temples that have been found, remains which have been found in Mathura and in Sonk. There was also worship of nature in different forms. Trees were worshipped like the banyan tree, and we will see that there was a Vat Savitri. Animals were worshipped. We know very well about the worship of Ganpati, again a deity mentioned in the Vedas. We know of the worship of the cow. We know of the worship of so many animals, and so many animals were also associated with their own deities. And they were the centers of community activity. They were nodes where society could come together and in a way transcend itself. There were festivals and fairs associated with these temples, and it is that which I will move on to now. Festivals. So what is a festival? In Sanskrit, it's called an utsav. What does utsav mean? It means a recreation. A recreation of an event either long gone, past, or a divine event, something that brings out the same bhav, the same bhavna, that same transcendence that it is supposed to evoke each and every time. You are carried outside yourself, you mingle with the community, and utsavs are often called mahotsavs. So what is maha? It is something which is bigger than yourself. So festivals were bigger than the individual. They were even bigger than society. They connected people to the divine, sometimes in very, very small and everyday ways, which were smoothly integrated into the cycle of life as it existed at the time. Remember, our cycles of life today are very different. So how are we going to look at these festivals? We will look at them in a seasonal way. Remember, the list of festivals, their complexity, and the different ways in which they are celebrated across the country. It is impossible to enumerate them in one episode or in 100 episodes because there are far too many strands. We will just try to tease out a few important ones and give you a picture of the way life was led and how festivals were integrated into seasonal changes and into the agricultural way of life as it existed. So we will start with the spring season, Vasant. Vasantotsav. So Vasantotsav was the most important festival of that period. You can see how it was celebrated. There were roughly 3 strands in this. So it was a celebration of Vasant, spring, beauty, the newness of nature. Everything was growing and the new year was starting again. So it was this spring was celebrated. Shringar Ras is the aesthetic of spring. It is the aesthetic of Vasant. Vasant, remember, is the best friend of Kamdev. So that is the second strand of Vasantotsav. So it was also called Madanotsav or Madan Mahotsav. That is a celebration of the god of love and of love itself. It also harks back to that story when Lord Shiv burns up Kamdev in his anger, but is later persuaded to relent and Kamdev comes back to life again. The third strand is that of Holak. The Holak or the Holika is burnt, and there are many stories associated with this also. It also perhaps refers to the burning of Kamdevta. In the Mauryan period itself, in the Arthashastra itself, and also in other texts around that time, there is a description of the widespread and very grand celebrations of the Vasantotsav, where people were in fact allowed to brew alcohol in their own homes. So they had food, drinks, intoxicants, they were happy, there were performances on the streets, the whole city was decorated, everyone came out, mixed with each other, threw colors or colored water and colored powder on each other, maybe threw flowers on each other. All those of you who have been fond of Karan Johar films will perhaps recognize this illustration. This illustration is nothing but Karwa Chauth. So even at that time, couples asked the moon god to bless them and their conjugal life on this Ashtami Chandrika. Here is another festival. This is called Ek Shalmali. And look at this picture of the Shalmali flower, the beautiful Shalmali flower, the Semal flower. So during this time, people went out, these flowers were in full bloom, and they played with these flowers out in nature. So you see, a lot of these spring festivals are connected with woods and flowers, and Panini mentions a lot of these flower festivals. There is also the Ashokottamsika, where women dressed up beautifully and dressed up and decorated their foot daintily and kicked the Ashok tree. It was supposed to flower at the touch of a beautiful woman. And then there was the Bakul tree. It would flower only if a beautiful girl took some wine in her mouth and spit it out on the Bakul tree. So can you see how wide and varied were the ideas around nature and around worship of nature, and at the same time of enjoying the lives which were intertwined with nature. I must make mention of the Shal Bhanjika. When Panini mentions all these flower festivals, it is to say that people went out into the woods and they played with trees, with the newly growing twigs and newly growing leaves. And there is a particular pose of a woman holding up a twig, which is called Shal Bhanjika in Indian sculpture. And the ubiquitousness of this sculpture shows you how widespread was this idea of festivals in the woods and close to nature. Now we will go on to summer. So summer was one of the important festivals during summer was Vat Savitri. This referred to the story of Savitri, who had followed her husband to the gates of Yamlok, brought him back from the jaws of death. And she was in the story, she is said to have worshipped the banyan tree. So in remembrance of her and in remembrance of this entire story, there is this whole Vat Savitri, and many dances were also associated with this. A quaint festival here, which is called Bhut Matrika. So there was a Brahma Rakshasi said to have been born of Parvati, a Bhut said to have been born of Lord Shiva, and they fell in love. This love is celebrated during the Bhut Matrika, and it is actually a celebration of that which is bizarre, of all those things which are peculiar, undesirable. So you see that society also celebrated the odd, the peculiar, the bizarre, the not so pleasant. Then we come to that wonderful Varsha Ritu. So what did again people do? They wanted to enjoy nature. So one of the festivals is Shikhandi Lasya, and that Shikhandi Lasya is going into the woods and enjoying the dance of the peacock. Then you have this Kadamb Yudh, and think of how sweet and delicate Kadam flowers are, how they are associated with Yudh. So it was not at all the unpleasant factor of fighting. In fact, it was a very sweet, soft and wonderful way of fighting with flowers, with Kadam flowers. Then you have also the swing. Who has not had the pleasure of swinging under the trees during the monsoon season? This was specially celebrated during the Andolan Chaturthi. So maybe the gentle rain pattering on the face and the gentle wind caressing your face and the swing in its Andolan, which means going up and down. So this was the Andolan Chaturthi. You can see the simple ways yet strong connections to nature and to the divine, which were completely packaged into these festivals. We go on to the Sharat Ritu, and before I move on to the main festivals of Dussehra and Diwali, I will mention just two very sweet little quaint little things which we wouldn't dream of doing today. So I thought it would be interesting to mention them. So one is the Bish Khadika, where you go to a lotus pond and you eat lotus roots, and you also carry lotuses in your mouth and you cavort in the water. Then there is the Nav Patrika, which is a celebration of new leaves, new foliage, new flowers, etc. Then we come to the most important festival complex, so to say, Dussehra and Diwali. This is an admixture of many different strands together. For Dussehra, there are three main strands. One is the worship of Devi, one is the worship of Ayudh, and another is a kind of victory procession. And we can trace all these back to that same Parishisht of the Atharvaved that I have mentioned. It is also associated with the Ram Katha, when Sri Ram defeats Ravan. In the Atharva Parishisht, there is a mention of making little images, Pishtamai Durga, and we still worship images and murtis of Durga. So Dussehra had all these different things rolled into one, and it is also associated with the worship of Devi in different ways. Remember that it is during this time, during Mahalya, that our Pitris, ancestors, come down from the heavens for a few days. They stay, we give our obeisance and we make our offerings to them, and then they go back. So when do they go back? So this then is the festival of Diwali. Now the festival of Diwali is again an admixture of many different strands, and we can just talk about a few of them. There is, of course, the Ram Katha, the return of Sri Ram to Ayodhya. There is also a worship of many other elements. Devi is worshipped, both Lakshmi and Kali. There is also the Dhan Trayodashi, and there is also the Dhanvantri Divas. So you can see how many of these strands are interwoven together and celebrated in different ways. But what are the main common features which were there then and which are there, of course, also now? It was the lighting of diyas or deep, so Deepavali. In the Kam Sutra, which is again has been set down around the time of the Mauryans, this is called the Yaksharatri or the Sukharatri, and there is a mention of lighting diyas. The other is Ulka Dan. So Ulka Danam is for those ancestors who are going back to their heavenly abode, and it is light to be shown to them on their way back. So therefore it is, Ulka means a kind of meteor, a light, a kind of flashing light in the sky. So it is from there that our practice of crackers during Diwali comes. So this has become a very vexed issue, but remember, there is no need to be so vexed about it. It is an inherent and inextricable part of Diwali, because we are showing our ancestors the way back by bright lights in the sky. So yes, at the time we did not have those crackers that we have today. We did not even call them crackers, and no Hema Malini and Madhuri Dixit on the covers of rockets. But homemade and brightly flashing lights were made in different ways and offered to the ancestors in different ways. So Deep and Ulka Danam were very important parts of Deepavali. Then it is also associated with the story of Raja Bali and with Darkasur. And in fact, over the years, a number of other stories have also added themselves to this time of the year, and we celebrate a lot of things at this time. Some things that we do not celebrate any longer, one of them is the Indradhwaj Makha. It was also around this same time. And it was a worship of Indra, and it was worship of Indra through setting up of Indradhwaj or flags. After this, we have something which is called Chhat in the north today and Kartik Deepam in the south. So it is the worship of the sun, and this is one of the oldest ways and oldest objects of worship in the entire world, and definitely has its roots in the Vedic period. You have a celebration of Makar Sankranti, a celebration of Pongal, and that brings us right back to Vasant again, and the entire cycle starts again. I cannot end this episode without discussing Krida or games. So Krida is a free expression of your spirit, and there were a plethora of games during this time. Some which kind of pitted people's physical capabilities against each other or intellectual capabilities against each other. So naturally there were things like chariot racing, horse racing, wrestling, or archery, etc. These were feats of strength, and these were very, very important. And these games were held with great verve and enthusiasm in Saman games. These were called Saman games. Then you had things like gambling, the very, very favorite activity of people across the ages. So gambling, which has first been mentioned in the Rig Veda, there is a gambler's lament in that. So gambling. Then you had Kanduk Krida, which is mentioned even in the Mahabharata. Then you also have Jal Krida, or playing in the water. And how can we not mention Chaturang, or that which later became Shatranj or chess. So Chaturang was played with dice. There was different kinds of Chaturang, Ashtabal and Dashbal. And there was also blindfolded chess, where the players had to imagine the boards in their heads. Then you had Chopad or Pachisi, from where comes Ludo. You also had other games which we still know. There was something called Lavan Vitika, which we today know as Kabaddi. There's something called Parihar Path, which we now know as hopscotch. And of course, children played in their own ways. They had different kinds of toys, and we have some remains of terracotta toys today. So dolls, houses, cooking utensils, carts, plows, etc. All the things which were part of daily life. They also played with pebbles and with cordis. And some of the games give me such a sense of recognition. So we come to the end of this short exposition of temples, festivals and games. There are some things which are very clearly still present today and have their roots in the past, in the modern period and even before that. But there are so many other things which are gone. There are only some kind of echoes and symbols of that closeness to nature which connected us with the divinity in earlier times. And it is not at all clear whether we can ever recover that closeness to nature and that reaching of divinity through nature that was a part of Indic festivals and Indic conceptions of the divine, because our ways of life have changed and perhaps nature does not play such an important role in our lives any longer. So we come to an end of this episode, and I will meet you next time for the last episode explaining the Janpad. Namaskar.
As we round off our tour of the Janpad, the land and the people, we will cast a quick glance at a few other very important parts of life. What made Mauryan life tick? What was the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics like? Language, literature, and the arts. Watch episode 10.